good.
Okay, the time is 7:02. 7:02, and welcome everyone. Today, this meeting of the Wooddale Community Development Commission, my name is Jamie Ochoa, and I'm the chairman of this commission. Ms. Secretary, can you please do a roll call?
Yes. Mr. Babowitz.
Here.
Ms. Rodnicki is absent. Mr. Parenti.
Here.
Mr. Peterson. Here. Ms. Zatko. Here. And Mr. Woods.
Here.
And Chairman Ochoa.
Here. Okay, the CDC has a quorum present. First thing we need is a motion to approve the minute meeting from November 21st.
I'll make that motion.
I'd like to add something to it, though.
Okay, so there's been a motion, a second, and this is the discussion, so.
Okay, I just want to add under other business, there's one important thing that was not put in there, and I realize, you can't do everything, but one of the reasons why I spoke about what I did last week was, or last month, was I was concerned about the voting that the CDC had done on some of the cases in opposition to the recommendations by the staff. And I had asked some questions, and they were certainly answered as far as I was concerned. One of the things Commissioner Woods said, well, we shouldn't always have to agree with everything the staff does, and I agree with that 100%. But I also think that we shouldn't be far apart. And I spoke just briefly with Stacy this last week, and I guess you're working on something that we'll have next month. And I think one of the things that if we can approve something, but then say we'd like the council to look at this, I think everything would be a lot smoother and it would be a lot easier. So that's what I would like to add something to that effect to the other business section of those
Do you have any
minutes.
recommendations, Member Babowitz, about the specific notes for the minutes on that?
Well, I would just say, as far as,
Yeah, what you feel is missing from the minutes?
well, what I feel is missing is that, number one, we should be in somewhat, you can underline that or italicize it, lockstep with the, we don't know what the council's gonna do, but somewhat in lockstep with what the recommendation is from the staff, because it's a highly qualified staff. They do a lot of work. They look into it. They don't just haphazard agree or disagree. An attorney, from what I was told, looks at everything to make sure that we're in compliance. So I would want that added. And then the other thing is that if we have an opportunity to say, okay, I'm in favor of this, but I would like the council to look at, like, and one of the issues was the trees on the building going up down the street here. I voted against it, and I shouldn't have. But the thing that I voted against was the 20 trees instead of 35 trees. And then Alderman Woods got us 40 trees. So, had we been able to put something like that in, it would have gone forward on our vote. And that's what I would like to see added. And we got this thing a couple days early. I thank you very much. Also very complete, and your staff did a good job on today's case of just outlining a lot of stuff. So I'm happy to see what you're doing, and I appreciate it, and I think everyone else here does too. And be sure Stacy gets that message as well.
All right, so just a point of procedure for everybody on the board. I was not here at the last meeting, obviously, many of you were. If you recall, Member Babowitz making some of those statements, and you don't have any objection to those items being put into the minutes, then the maker of the motion, I believe it was Mr. Woods, would do a motion to amend.
But I would like to add something into it. Just the point of where you said you wish you didn't vote no. If you didn't vote no, he might not have got those 40 trees.
That's a possibility. I mean, that's definitely a possibility.
That's the only part.
And that's the part you're talking about, and that's why I said I don't disagree with you.
I just want to be clear for the record. All we're doing right now is approving minutes, okay? So some of those other items we can bring up as discussion items later. We're just approving minutes. There's been a motion and a second. Mr. Woods, as the maker of the motion, if you'd like to amend your motion to include the representations of Member Babowitz, you can do so.
I'll make my motion that way. Yes.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, so there's a motion to amend the original motion. There's been a second, and it will be adding the statements of Mr. Babowitz to last month's minutes. So we can have a roll call there.
Okay. Mr. Babowitz,
Here.
Yep, so this is a
Yea,
yes or no?
yes. Yes, I'm here. I'm here and I'm saying yes. Whatever, pick your choice.
To approve the
A or
amended
B.
minutes.
to approve the minutes as amended.
As a-
Yes,
That was your statement.
yes.
Okay. Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Yes. Ms. Zadko?
Yes.
Mr. Woods?
Yes.
And Chairman Ochoa?
No.
No.
All right, well, the motion carries. The motion carries, minutes are approved with amended. Chairman, moving on to tonight's public hearing. Mr. Conway, as chairman, can you please facilitate tonight's meeting, please?
Certainly. Okay, for our public hearings, all testimony will be given under oath. At the hearing, there'll be an opportunity for the public to offer testimony and to comment. Following the public hearing, the CDC's deliberations will be open to the public in the sense that all are invited to listen and watch. The public, however, may not speak during the CDC's deliberations. We ask that the applicants here tonight give specific evidence to demonstrate that the proposal meets the standards of approval for the request. The burden is on the applicant to prove the case. Additionally, city staff will provide a general description of the proposal followed by their analysis. With respect to others who wish to speak, you may give an opinion or present specific evidence as to why you believe that the applicant meets or fails to meet the standards for the request. Finally, we will strictly adhere to the schedule prepared for tonight's meeting. However, those wishing to submit evidence and testimony will be afforded sufficient time within which to do so. Whether you're a member of the public wishing to make a statement for the record or a witness testifying on behalf of the applicant, you will be placed under oath, and then you will begin by stating your name and address. You'll be subject to questions by the Community Development Commission with potential cross-examination by the applicant. To allow as many people to be heard as possible, we request that you limit your remarks to 5 minutes. If any additional time is needed, the hearing may be continued to the next available hearing date. I will now call tonight's first and only matter. That's CDC 2022-10. This case involves an application that's been filed by Ryan Weigel, representing Weigel Toolworks Incorporated, doing business as Weigel, for zoning variations, including a reduction of the required side setback, an increase to the maximum lot coverage, and a reduction of the number of required parking spaces. This is pursuant to section 17.204C of the Municipal Code of the City of Wooddale and applicable zoning regulations. These variations are being requested to enable an addition to an existing commercial building at 950 Seabird Drive. Staff, can you please indicate when notice of the hearing was published and whether you have the certificate of publication from the newspaper?
Would you raise your right hand? Please state your name and address.
Gosha Pacheha, 404 North Wooddale Road, Wooddale, Illinois.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the publication notice was published in Daily Herald on December 2nd of this month. We also send out notices to property owners within 250 feet of the subject property, and a sign was posted at the property. We do have a certificate of publication on file.
Okay, great. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
Would you raise your right hand and state your name and address, please?
For the record, my name is Marshall Subak, S-U-B-A-C-H. I'm an attorney with Hunt and Subak at 1035 South York Road in Pennsylvania, Illinois.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am here tonight with representing the petitioner. Formerly, the petitioner is 950 Seabird LLC. That's the owner of the property. Here with me tonight is Ryan Weigel of Weigel Tools, doing business as Weigel. Also, Ken Lindberg, who is the architect, and then Mike Latoria, who is the consulting general contractor. We're here requesting 3 variances, as Sean said, for the property at 950 Severt to allow for construction of a 12,236 square foot addition to the existing building. I know we're the only one on the agenda, so we will keep it short tonight. My client is going to give you a little background about Weagle. It's really important to hear what they do because it's really, it's a critical business in Wooddale that's been around a long time. So right now, I'll just turn it over initially to Ryan.
Would you raise your right hand, please, and state your name and address?
Ryan Weagle at 950 Seaver Drive.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So
I do.
help you God.
I do. Again, I want to thank everybody for their time tonight, and I just want to give a little bit of brief history of my company. So as far as our company is concerned, we have a wide range of presses between 30 tons or 450 tons, meaning small to large presses for your. Also, we have certifications, so we are ISO and IATF. What that means, we're also environmentally friendly through our 14001 certificate. And the biggest thing, the big buzz nowadays is EV portfolio. So we're actually, one of our customers in our product list I can disclose is Tesla. So again, it's a growing sector, and we're looking to add more production lines potentially in this facility. And we just celebrated our 81st anniversary. So as far as our overall footprint, of course, we have this facility here off of Central, 935 North Central Avenue. And this is the subject property right here at 950 Severt, of course. And then we also own a facility in Bensenville. At that time, when we acquired it in 2017, there was no applicable properties available in the village. We would love to stay in the village, but we needed to increase our footprint and our storage capacity, so that's why we ended up going to that facility. And we also have a building right across the street in Elk Grove for additional storage use. But our main headquarters, our main manufacturing headquarters is at Central and now at Severt, the subject property. Kind of give you a brief history how we started. My grandfather came here in 41. I'm sorry, he started the business in 41. We had a footprint in Franklin Park. We've been in, my father purchased the property in 1972. Our current address we built in 1978. Again, just give you a brief history as far as the milestones. My brother and sister and I have been owners of the company since 2010. In 2011, we put our addition on the Central location. 2011 was actually when we acquired the Seaver location. And then 2017, the Bensenville property. 2019 has been a huge increase in robotics and automation in our facility at the Bensenville location. And then 2021 is when we are subleasing the building right across the street from us, which we actually are looking for additional warehouse capacity as well. And then 2020, we decided to drop the Toolworks and do DBA because we're adding more solutions to our portfolio. Again, these are all the sectors that we cater to. Most importantly right now is electric vehicles, but we do some LED contract work as well. And these are type of parts that we produce. Again, a lot of electrical components, type of equipment that we house. And then all the services that we provide, we're a full turnkey solution. From tooling, to prototyping, to production, to inspection.
One thing Ryan's too modest to advise you is most businesses, when you get to third generation, the success rate for continuation is 10%. Ryan and his siblings have made the company stronger than it has ever been. Their growth is amazing. They have 230 employees that work at these facilities. They're one of the largest employers, I believe, in Wooddale. On the less exciting, boring side of the zoning part, that's what I get to do. This zoning is in the TCC district, which is your Thorndale Corridor Corporate. It has an I-1 industrial overlay district. The property is 1.44 acres. The existing building is 25,000 square feet. The petitioner wants to construct an addition that's 12,236 square feet. To build this, there's going to be 3 variances that they need. The first one is the side yard setback of 5-foot variance. Right now, the existing building is 15 feet off the south property line, and under the new revised UDO, the code now requires 20 feet. So we have existing 15, the new code is 20, so we need a 5-foot variance. The reason for that is the functionality of the building. You don't want to have it in by 5 feet. For construction-wise, it needs to be a straight line, so we're asking for that 5-foot variance. Sure, you can show, absolutely. So this is the variance along this south property line there, okay? The second variation is for lot coverage. Again, just to show you here, this is the proposed addition. This is the existing 25,000 square foot building. The lot coverage right now is over 90%. That's what the code before allowed. So we're within compliance of the old code. Now with the revisions to the UDO, your lot coverage is a maximum of 80%. With this addition, we're going to be, the addition's all on existing pavement. There's no issues with neighbors complaining about water or water runoff or flooding in the area. So we're actually going from over 90% lot coverage down to 83%. The code requires 80%, so our lot coverage variation we're looking for is 3%. But again, we're actually adding green space to the property. The last variance we are requesting is a parking variance. And under the UDO, based upon the usage for this building, staff calculated that we're going to need 52 spaces. We have 39 spaces available. The petitioner, again, and being in business a long time with how many employees they have, they know how many parking spaces they're going to need in the business. It doesn't matter what the UDO says, doesn't matter what the attorney says, it's what the business says they need. He's confident he needs 24 spaces to run his operation. This space is going to be a flexible space. They're actually eliminating office space, so staff did nothing wrong, but when staff calculated some of the calculations to get to 52, they had 1,000 square feet of office, because that's how it is now, but they're probably going to eliminate that office space, which would lower this requirement. But the reality is there's family owned across the street, not across the street, right next to it there, as Ryan is showing. So they can have 31 spaces on their existing at 950, and then they're going to have 8 spaces for overflow, which would get us to 39. So the variance is going from 52 to 39. But again, the petitioner is confident for Weigel, they only need 24 spaces. This is not the type of facility that you have customers coming. It's all going to be employees that are parking there.
And again, too, the flex space is gonna be manufacturing and warehousing. So if you actually look at the requirements for warehousing, it's 1 car per 1,000 square feet. That's a reduction in some parking stalls as is.
So the factors to consider whether or not to grant a variance under the UDO and under all codes, the first factor is unique physical conditions. And here, the unique physical conditions is that the original building was built in the 1970s, and we want obviously to be connecting to the existing structure. Ryan, if you can go back one. So obviously, that needs to be a straight line for, Mr. Latore would tell you that for construction purposes. And so that's why it's unique of the physical building right now to get that variation. The next factor for this board to consider is whether or not it was self-created. Again, the physical condition of the property met the codes back in 1970. I believe I was 8 years old when this was built. And the required variances are directed, not self-created by the petitioner, but because the code has changed, and now we have to comply with the current code for the UDO. The next factor to consider is whether or not the petitioner would be denied a substantial right, and he has the right to expand his property. He has the right to use his property for the highest and best use. And if you looked at other properties surrounding in the area, many of them are 15 feet from the property line or more, because they were meeting the codes at the time. So in order to, we'd be denied our substantial right to have the property used at its highest and best use, which includes expanding the use if the variance is not granted. The next factor is whether or not we're granting a special privilege to this property, and we're not. These same variances, you're gonna see many of these from petitioners as we see how the revised UDO comes into play with how it fits with their existing buildings. So this is not a special privilege being granted to this property only. The next factor is whether or not the granting of the variance is in harmony with the code and the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan says this property should be industrial. The UDO, I forgot how many pages it was, but it has language in there that talks about you want to make sure you're attracting new businesses, but also allowing for existing businesses to survive, to expand, and to grow, and to allow flexibility to owners so that they're not sitting there idly if this variance isn't granted. This space can't change unless it's redeveloped entirely, and that's certainly not in the best interest of the city of Wooddale or the petitioner. The last factor, or the next factor, is whether or not granting the variance will be detrimental to the city of Wooddale. Is it gonna increase flooding? Is it gonna increase traffic? There's gonna be no increased traffic, no increased flooding, increased chances for fire. Not gonna have that. This can be built according to all the current fire codes for Wooddale, fully sprinkled. Whatever the fire code requires, this building, the expansion we've built according to that. And we're actually, again, reducing lot coverage from the current situation. And then the last factor is that there's no other way to get this expansion without the granting of these variances, which is true. So, in closing, staff recommends approval. Staff made a finding that, in their memo to you, that we've met these requirements. This is a business that Wooddale needs to embrace. This is one that we should be making sure we do anything they need so they are in town, stay in town. The only time they've left is when they couldn't find another building in town in order to have warehousing, which does show me, as a resident of Wooddale, they have the ability to move if they need to, and we don't want that. We want them here in town, thriving as a business, continuing to employ as many people as they can. There are two things that staff has in the report that I am gonna ask you to, at least if you vote to approve this, to consider in your deliberations to maybe ask the city council to deviate from. One of them is for the parking agreement. These are all related, these are all individual LLCs. They have common ownership. It's all family. It's parents and kids. The UDO requires that if you're gonna have a shared parking agreement, those need to be recorded against the property. I understand why that would be. It's so that there's this agreement memorialized. From a legal standpoint, the problem as an attorney I have is, in 30 years, 40 years, if this building's ever sold and somebody can't find, you're not gonna have the full agreement recorded. You're just gonna say that there's shared parking. It could affect the ability to sell this property when you have these old recorded documents, not now, but down the road. So I'm asking to make a recommendation to maybe have the city council find a will and a way to not require that shared parking agreement to be recorded, just so we don't affect the ability to sell these properties way down the road. And then the second one is, we didn't put a request in, but if you remember last time I was here talking very long, the code requires landscaping islands to be installed. So here there's no landscaping islands now, but now when the new parking comes in, you have to put in landscaping islands. Landscaping islands is gonna be, basically a curb cut, with some mulch and a tree, that's never gonna see the light of day. And what I mean by that is, you're not gonna see it from the street. It's gonna be next to the building next door, which is another industrial building between these two buildings. We couldn't ask for that variance because the UDO code doesn't allow us to ask for those variances. But again, with the will, there's a way. Landscaping islands are good when you're talking about maybe larger parking lots, but smaller parking lots, they become a real issue with snow plowing and stacking snow and all that. So petitioner's requesting, if this board is so inclined, to maybe relax that requirement for the landscaping island, because I believe there's only be one that would be required to be installed. With that, I think my client has one more part of her presentation he wants to summate for you as well. Thank you, and we're here to answer any questions.
Just want to give you the brief history on our growth here. So you can see substantially we've grown year over year. And the amount of investments we continue to make in the company is quite substantial. And we are, and like I say, when I say we, my brother and sister and I keep on dumping in monies. We don't have a fancy house in Florida. This is our life. This is our livelihood. We continue to want to invest in the company no matter what. Again, our quality certifications I touched on earlier. Community contributions. So we do have a training program within legal where we do take on apprentices and we do train them, and they all are required to work 10,000 paid working hours on-site training in various departments, 3 years of paid schooling through the TMA located in Schaumburg, and they will be accredited with a U.S. DOL, and journeyman tool and die position is granted at the end of the program. A couple of our pictures of our young individuals in the program. This is just a graph that just kind of resonates with parents, saying that if you have an individual that is in the program versus going to college, the company paying for their schooling, you see the delta between the two. So we strongly encourage the trade, especially tool and die making and schooling that we pay for. We host quite a bit of events through local schools and colleges. Fenton has been on site, Elk Groves has been on site, and the junior highs. Also, we do involve in speaking engagements. And I personally donated through the TMA, the Education Foundation, to schools for grant monies towards machinery and equipment. And of course, we also host some government officials, as when Rauner was part of his re-election campaign. Also, we hosted Tammy Duckworth as well.
Okay, thank you. Does any member of the CDC have any questions for either Mr. Subak or Mr. Weigel?
Thank you. I have a few questions. Before I ask you a question, Mr. Weigel, congratulations on your recognition as Small Medium Manufacturer of the Year. Is that right?
Yes.
Nice. I saw that on your website. Very nice, and congratulations. So the building at 960 is family owned? 960, the one on the corner on top of yours. Is that?
That was, we don't own that property.
Okay. So the parking agreement discussion is with 950 and 935, is that what we were talking about?
Correct.
Yes, between those two, yes.
Got it, okay. Questions for Gosha, or do I have to stay with Mr. Weigel? Gosha?
No, if you.
Ms. Gosha, questions from, for security, public safety, and fire department concerns. Any concerns with this variation that they're asking for?
No, so we did reach out to the fire district, and one of the questions that the petitioners brought to us was, is they're actually proposing a connection between the 950 property and 935. There is an existing, I believe it's a fire lane or at least a drive aisle along the 935 property, and the fire district really would have access to cross through between the two properties. So they've looked at it and they didn't have any concerns, or they didn't raise any concerns.
What about, does the city have any kind of concerns or impact with aesthetic concerns? As far as what the architect presented to you, to your team?
Not necessarily. I mean, aesthetics is not something that is definitely codified in our UDO.
Okay.
Obviously, it's something we're looking for as we're looking at the entirety of the proposal, but we do not have appearance standards for additions such as this one.
Okay. I don't have, okay, one more. I did write down one more. Impact to city streets, traffic?
It's an existing business that is just expanding the footprint. Our UDO does not require traffic studies in this case. We do know that the existing neighborhood, the area, is developed as an industrial park, as a business park, so most likely it's able to support that. But this isn't something that we specifically went out to review or have anyone else review.
Thank you, Gosha. Thank you, Mr. Wheel.
Member Woods?
The 935 building, was there a variation needed for parking on that building when it was done?
Unfortunately, I do not know. I know there was use of permeable pavers for lot coverage, so I believe they may have requested a lot coverage variance, but in terms of the number of required parking spaces, it is unlikely. The petitioner did submit an analysis for both of the properties. It is in the one of the exhibits in the memo. So they essentially took the square footage of both of the buildings and assigned the use. So just to clarify, the office space that was for the 950, that was on the applicant's presentation, the part of the application, so that's why there was an office component to it. That triggers that 52 total of the number of parking spaces for the 950. The property at 935, based on what is needed and the existing parking that's there is an excess of 8 parking spaces. So it is quite possible that maybe originally when this was developed, the variance was needed for the parking, but looking at the current code requirements, they actually have 8 parking spaces that exceed code requirement.
Okay. And a question for you, how many people do you have working in that building right now?
At the 950 Seabird,
Yes.
we have roughly 15.
And when you put the addition on, how many?
It would actually be taking a lot of the employees from the adjacent facility, would be transferring over to the main facility. So it'd be basically a wash. Would not be added, maybe.
So you're not gonna add more employees
We're
in?
gonna add potentially maybe 5 to 10 right off the bat. If we add more equipment, that's the goal.
Now you say right off the bat, future?
Future. So one of the plans we would like to do is that the 950 Seabird, we would like to have a decent clear height, okay? And I believe we put 35 feet was the clear height. And part of that is that because of accommodate our heavy-duty equipment. So we have presses in there, they're in ground, 5 feet in ground, and they're several stories high. So actually removing it, destacking it, it's quite an endeavor. So we would put that, essentially that press potentially in that facility to house over there and actually have the nice clear height in order to get it in, no problem.
Okay, and back to you, Marshall.
Yes.
The islands, you don't think they're important?
Can I answer that?
Sure,
Okay.
go ahead.
You know, I have to short hands, but I personally, and part of my little endeavor here, I'm the one that first operated a Bobcat. Actually, the reason why I got a Bobcat was the storm of 2011, February 2011. If you all remember that, right? So you had a massive amount of snow and nowhere to put it. So I said, well, the only one that's penetrating is the Bobcat. So I I got myself a Bobcat, still have to this day, still operate to this day. And let me tell you, in that north side, going through that parking lot and weaving in and out of those islands are a big pain in the neck. And you cannot put any type of grass in those islands, does not take. So the only thing you can do is put river rock and one tree. So we're gonna be adding a small little area parking lot with one island, mind you, with river rock and a tree. Do I think it's worth it? Absolutely not, because of that area, that space, to actually push the snow and get rid of it over that area, it's so constricted, there's nowhere to put the snow. So I would rather have it eliminated, although we do have a Bobcat, we can scoop it up and put it somewhere else on our property. They're a major pain in the neck when it comes to snow removal.
Go ahead.
May I add to that? So, just so we are clear, our code has a list of authorized variations. So a petitioner could submit a petition stating that I want to request or I need to request a variance from these particular code sections. Landscaping requirements are not an authorized variation. So CDC does not have the authority to recommend, and City Council does not have the authority, based on those authorized variation, to grant a variation related to specific landscaping requirements, including landscape islands. What we do have is a 25% administrative variance. So any type of landscape relief could be considered through a site plan review process that will be required for the building permit. So that's when staff will take a look at it and see, where actually it's the applicant who can request the 25%. I do want to point out that we haven't really had the time to specifically look at the landscaping. The code actually states that if there's more than 20 or more parking spaces, a landscape island will be required. I believe I did a quick count. I think only 11 are being added. The rest of the parking is existing. It will not be touched. So it's quite possible that's not even going to be a requirement. But just to really sum up, it's not something that we can consider tonight because it is not an authorized variation.
And then, again, just keep in mind, we're going from 90% lot coverage with little greenery to 83. That's what we're asking for. So, as far as green space, we're actually increasing the green space footprint in this property.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. Gosha, did you have any remarks that you wish to make as to this proposal?
We actually covered a lot of the stuff. I did have a presentation ready. I mean, I can run through it very quickly. Obviously, we're familiar with the property, so now we kind of know where the subject property is located and the property next door. The zoning, we've already talked about. There's really not a lot of changes here. The existing, this is the existing condition, so this is the front of the building. The addition, as we discussed, will be added to the back. There is no new impervious surface, as was mentioned, so it does not trigger all of the engineering requirements in terms of the stormwater and so on. If anything, we are at about 90% lot coverage, and it will be reduced to the 83, because once the building addition comes in, this area, which is currently impervious surface, will be removed and will be turned to the green space. The landscaping I did want to kind of touch upon, that will be considered as a part of the permitting process, of the site plan review that's required for the permit. This is the addition on the back, and there's about 31 total parking spaces, but some of them are existing, some of them will be the new ones that are added along the property. I'm sorry, the new addition. The zoning variation, so it's really just the 3 requests that are being considered. One thing to keep in mind is that shared parking. So because we are short on parking on the site, the property owners have the ability to have an agreement with adjacent properties to have a shared parking agreement. The UDO is quite specific in terms of what that agreement looks like, and it's a document that needs to be reviewed by city attorneys. There is a specific mention in the code that that document must be recorded. So just so you're aware, the code specifically says that it really should be recorded, which I understand, there could be implications for the property owners, but at the same same time, if somebody's selling the property, usually it is the full document, at least in my experience, it's the full document that gets recorded, that all of the maintenance requirements and so on are noted in it. So that is something that would be coming forward. So briefly talked about the shared parking before.
That's just a typo, it's 9.5%, so.
Oh, I belong, thank you. I apologize for that. So we talked about the code requirements. Based on the square footage that were provided, there is an excess of 8 parking spaces in the property that's adjacent. So those would be the 8 parking spaces that are subject to the shared parking agreement. Very briefly, in terms of compliance with the the comprehensive plan, we're not really changing the use. Everything is in compliance, and it does support the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. And then we really haven't received any public comment related to the notice. I mentioned we did notify subject property owners within 250 feet, and the notice was published in the newspaper, sign was placed on the site. So we do find that the proposal is consistent with the UDO and with the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for Ms. Pocheha?
Yeah, I have one on that. What Mr. Subak talked about the no parking recording. Would that be an issue then?
I may actually have to double check, because that was not a specific request that was submitted to us, and essentially it's a variation from the code requirement, so I'm not quite sure if that's something that's the public notice didn't specifically address that. The notice stated that there's a variation in the total number of parking spaces, but there was no request to remove that recordation requirement. So that may be an issue.
What about the island? Same thing?
The islands are not part of this petition at all.
So that's like you
no.
talked about, so that's
Yes.
not an issue.
So Gosha, just so we are clear, the parking agreement is not part of the 3 variations that are being discussed.
It was not requested, no.
It's not requested, and we are not voting on that, or,
It was not part of the notice, so no.
thank you.
Yeah, and I just a point of procedure, legally speaking, you're here to consider the petition that was submitted. Ms. Pocheha has indicated that the landscape requirement was not an aspect of the petition, although I believe Ms. Pocheha indicated, number one, it may not come to be, after further review, or if it does, there may be some sort of administrative relief that can be granted that way. In terms of the recordation of the parking agreement, again, that's not an aspect of the petition, so that's not something you would be considering tonight. Obviously, city council can always, consider, these sorts of things. So, just want to make that clear. Okay. All right, any other questions for Ms. Pocheha? Mr. Subak, do you have any questions for Ms. Pocheha?
No, we're fine, and we'll deal with the recording at the city council and changing, and I appreciate maybe that staff doesn't, it's not required as far as the landscaping, so we're fine, thank you.
Okay. All right, any further questions before we close the public hearing portion? Remember, once we close the public hearing, at that time, it's just for the deliberations between members. So there's no longer an ability to ask further questions of staff or Mr. Subak or Mr. Weigel. So if you have any last questions you want to ask, now's the time to do it. Yep.
Well, we're not gonna deliberate on the parking situation at all as far as the shared parking. It's not being asked of us right now.
Correct, yeah, that
So we're
recording that agreement issue.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
If I may clarify, so the shared parking is part of the request. What's not is the fact whether the shared parking agreement needs to be recorded with the county.
Ordered or not.
Right.
But you previously said it must be.
Yes. Yeah, but that's why the actual request, there is a reduction in the required number of parking spaces that is partially being offset by the shared parking agreement with the property next door. It's one of the variation requests.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so now I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
I'll motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. Marilyn, can we have a roll call on that?
Yes, Mr. Beverly?
Yes.
Mr. Parenti?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Zadko?
Yes.
Mr. Woods?
Yes.
Chairman Ochoa?
Yes.
Okay, so the public hearing portion is now closed. Now we're into deliberations. Does anybody have any general comments, statements they'd like to make as to this particular request?
Yeah,
Mr. Bevelin?
Mr. Subak, your point about the 10%, the third generation, reminds me of the story, you probably heard it. First generation builds the business, second generation advances it, third generation runs it in the ground. You have a great model of your business, and I'm glad to see it here in Wooddale. You've done a great job, and you're going forward. And my position on this is that we should welcome his achievements, his desire to expand his business, and I would vote yes.
Any other statements, comments?
Well, my comment would be, this is a great example of why we have this process here. We have an applicant in good faith with good motives to request deviations, variations from existing codes. And we are here to examine them, question them, and do our voting accordingly. So I agree that a company's growing. Everyone here wants to grow, personally, professionally. And this is a great example of how we can keep a number one countrywide, nationwide, in small, medium manufacturing in town. You know, bringing the trophy right to our hometown. So that's awesome, Mr. Weigel.
You know, one other thing, Jamie, what you were saying, all three of you were at the UDO when that thing was going on, that circus we had right here in Wooddale. And a lot of things went on, but here is you brought it before us, a change, and again, I support what you want to do. And the council, or the staff, made the recommendation, looked at it, and also agreed with what you want to do. And I think that just proves that we can get things done here in Wooddale.
All right, any other statements, comments?
Yeah. I think the company is a great company. Expanding, I love it. The only thing I'm worried about, if we all remember HFC with all the parking problems, couldn't sell that building for 10, 15 years. Now, I'm not saying anybody's going anywhere, they're staying here, but it's something we ought to keep in our mind that someday may come back to haunt us. All right, that's it.
Okay, any other comments? All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to read a recommended motion. It is a motion that's also in the staff memo. Again, and this is for the new members as well. We always pose our motions affirmatively, meaning when I read the motion, it will be to recommend approval of these variation requests. Okay, so after I read the motion, one of the members will say, "So moved." There'll be a second. That will get the motion onto the floor. Once we have the roll call, if you vote yes, you are voting in favor of granting the zoning relief. Okay, so a yes vote is you're granting in favor, a no vote is you're recommending denial. Okay, so I'm going to read the motion now. Based on the submitted petition and the testimony presented, the proposed variations request is consistent with the Unified Development Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan, and therefore I move that the Community Development Commission adopt the findings of fact included within the staff memo dated December 19th, 2022, as the findings of the Community Development Commission, and recommend to the City Council approval of the zoning variations for reduction of side setbacks from 20 feet to 15 feet, increase in the lot coverage from 80% to 83%, and reduction in the required parking spaces from 52 to 39, including 8 shared parking spaces at 935 Central Avenue, in case number CDC 2022-10. That's the recommended motion. Anybody can say so moved.
So moved.
Was that Mr. Bibowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Babowitz, second by Ms. Satzko. Okay, any further discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Bibowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Parenti?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Zatko? Yes. Mr. Woods?
Yes.
Chairman Ochoa?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. The recommendation from the CDC will be one to approve the requests for variations. That will go to the committee meeting. I'm not sure exactly when. Do you know,
We
Ms. Patel?
don't have the dates, but we're probably towards the second half of January.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that concludes that particular matter. Mr. Chairman, that concludes all the hearings for tonight, and so I cede the floor back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Gosha, is there any report from staff?
Well, we just wanted to let you know that we are working on a couple other petitions. Most likely, we may have two come to CDC in January and probably one more in February. So there's definitely things that are in the pipeline. And that's really all in terms of kind of ongoing projects. We did want to wish everyone happy holidays, since that's kind of coming up in a couple days, and we'll definitely looking forward to working together in the new year.
Awesome. Did we ever find out who the glasses belong to?
No, thank you so much for reminding me. So I did want to ask if anyone perhaps lost their glasses. We have a black case. No. Okay, so we'll keep on searching. It was
Not
somebody, probably the last few weeks left it in this room. So we've been trying to reach out to all the members, all the committees that meet here, just to see if anyone
Thank you,
perhaps is
Gosha.
missing
With-
glasses.
With that, we need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Need a motion first.
Mr. Babowitz?
So
making a
moved.
motion?
So moved.
All right.
Mr. Woods?
There
second.
being a motion and a second, all in favor signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed signify by stating no. Motion carries, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.